You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter @RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, except no imitation. I've got to start by previewing the World Series. A World Series that no one on earth foresaw except Trevor Plouffe. I'm not kidding. Plouffe actually had this back in March. I don't know how he saw this coming, but he should play lotto tonight. Although I'll say this, I don't know how confident he was in that prediction when the Braves saw Ronald Acuna go down with that torn ACL. I mean, I know I've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. Think about where the Braves were at the time of that injury. It happened on July 10th. The Braves narrowly beat the Marlins 5-4. After that day's games, they were 4.5 games behind the Mets for first place in the NL East. They were 7 games behind the Padres for the second wildcard spot. There's no way that anyone would have thought that the Braves would mount a miraculous comeback and win the NL East, or even make the playoffs. I mean, I remember going on this show right around the All-Star break and saying that the NL East is the Mets' division to lose. The Phillies weren't that good. The Braves had just lost Acuna. I really thought that the Mets were going to run away with the NL East. I thought the Braves would keel over and die. I mean, I remember saying something to the effect of, why are the Braves making these trades? Why are they bringing in Jock Peterson? Why are they bringing in Eddie Rosario? Why are they bringing in Adam Duvall? Why are they bringing in Jorge Soler? It's not going to replace Acuna's output. You're putting lipstick on a pig. It's not going to work. You're going to fall off. There's no way you make the playoffs. I mean, keep in mind, Ronald Acuna was having an MVP caliber season. At the time of the injury, he was hitting .283 with 24 home runs, 52 RBIs, 17 steals, and he had a .394 on base percentage. And when you combine that with the fact that Marcell Ozuna missed the vast majority of the season because of domestic violence allegations, and Christian Pache was so bad that he got sent down to Gwinnett, there's no way that this new look outfield is gonna work. There's no way that it's gonna coalesce and result in a big run. But somehow, some way, it did. From August 1st through the end of the regular season, the Braves went 36-19. They were helped a lot by the Mets falling off a cliff, and the Phillies were never world beaters this year. But winning 36 of 55 games is really impressive. To put that number into perspective, the Braves won just under 2/3 of their games from August through the end of the regular season. They had a .654 winning percentage. Nothing short of incredible, given the fact that the outfield that they were trotting out there consisted of guys who no one in Atlanta cared about. Jock Peterson, oh, that's great. Let him do his thing with the Cubs. Jorge Soler, yeah, let him do his thing with the Royals. Adam Duvall, now that he left, I don't care about him. Let him do whatever he wants with the Marlins. Eddie Rosario, who on earth is Eddie Rosario? Let him do his thing with the Indians. It would have been very easy for the Braves to just keel over, to sell off their rentals and say, this isn't our year. We'll try it again next year when we get Acuna back, once the Ozuna thing gets sorted out, once Christian Pache gets his head screwed on straight. Let's try it again next year. I mean, like I said, I thought that was the right decision. Sell off everyone. Any rental, any pseudo rental, adios amigo. But Alex Anthopoulos rebuilt the outfield on the fly. Brian Snitker rallied the troops. I mean, if not for Gabe Kapler, Snitker has a strong argument for Manager of the Year. All the injuries that the Braves had, and they win the division? Give Manager of the Year to Snitker. I mean, he's not going to get it because the Giants won 107 games. But Snitker would have a strong argument for it if the Giants didn't exist. I mean, Snitker's a guy who doesn't care about analytics. He manages by his gut. He's an old school guy. He's showing that the old school way of leading a baseball team still works. There have been numerous articles written about this. Brian Snitker is one of the best managers in baseball. He doesn't care about sabermetrics. You think about the organizations that do, they're not in the World Series. You think the Astros care about sabermetrics? Not as much as some teams do. Realize Jeff Luhnow and AJ Hinch aren't there anymore. Sabermetrics doesn't work. But back to the Braves. While it's easy to focus on the outfield and the great years that Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, and Austin Riley had, don't overlook the pitching staff. Don't overlook the really good seasons that Charlie Morton, Max Fried, and Ian Anderson had. I mean, the bullpen was great. Will Smith had 37 saves. Luke Jackson was a great setup guy. Tyler Matzek came out of nowhere to have a really good season. AJ Minter had a good season. Chris Martin, former Yankee great, had a good season. The Braves won 88 games. they go up against the Brewers, and they're able to hit that really good pitching staff. They get to Brandon Woodruff. They get to Adrian Hauser. Freddie Freeman hits the big home run off of Josh Hader to win the series for the Braves. I mean, I picked the Brewers in that series. I didn't think the Braves would solve the Brewers' pitching. But it seemed like whenever the Braves needed a big hit, they got it. Think about it. You're in the bottom of the 5th inning. The series is tied at 1. It's a scoreless game. You have back-to-back singles. So runners on first and second, nobody out for Jock Peterson. You need a big hit there. What does Peterson do? Hit a 3-run home run. That was the only scoring in that game. Game 4, the Brewers' offense finally shows up a little bit. They score 4 runs. Not a great performance by any stretch, but considering they only scored 2 runs in the first 3 games of that series, that's pretty darn good. They knock Charlie Morton out. They get a 2-0 lead in the top of the 4th. In the bottom of the 4th, they manufacture a couple runs to tie the game. Austin Riley hits a leadoff single. He's stranded at first until Travis d'Arnaud gets a walk. Guillermo Heredia gets hit by the pitch. Bases loaded, 2 men out for Eddie Rosario. On an 0-2 count, he hits a single that scores 2. Incredibly big moment. Incredibly huge hit. Rowdy Tellez responds by hitting a 2-run home run off Huascar Noah to give the Brewers a 4-2 lead. The Braves manufacture some runs again. A single, a walk, and a hit by pitch brings Jock Peterson up. Another 0-2 count. He drives Ozzie Albies in. And then Travis d'Arnaud hits an RBI single that scores Austin Riley. Then in the bottom of the 8th, no one is thinking that Freddie Freeman is going to hit a home run off Josh Hader. This is Josh Hader, one of the best closers in baseball. A guy who had only given up 3 home runs all season. He's not going to give up a 4th to Freddie Freeman. It's just not going to happen. But on the first pitch, Freeman hits one of the biggest home runs he can hit. Gives the Braves a 5-4 lead. Braves win the series. I didn't think they had a snowball's chance in hell of beating the Dodgers. But again, much like the Brewers series, they got big hits when they really needed to. Game 1. Tied at 2 in the bottom of the 9th. Ozzie Albies hits a 1-out single. He steals second. Then Austin Riley drives him in on a walk-off single. Game 2. It looks like the Dodgers are going to run away with this game early. 6 pitches into the game, the Dodgers are up 2-0. The Dodgers had first and second, 2 men out. Cody Bellinger flew out. That was a big moment right there. That could have resulted in the floodgates opening if Bellinger had hit a home run, or even a gapper. Instead, Ian Anderson shut the door. The Dodgers had a 4-2 lead entering the bottom of the 8th. Eddie Rosario hits a leadoff single. Somehow, some way, he gets to second on a sac fly. Incredibly gutsy. Then the incredibly gutsy send by Ron Washington. On the RBI single by Albies. Another incredibly gutsy send by Washington. On the RBI double by Riley. 3 times. If the Dodgers could have executed in the field, that rally never happens. But the Braves pushed the envelope, and it worked. Give them credit. Of course, it doesn't work for the Yankees, but it works for the Braves. Then the bottom of the 9th hits. Brusdar Graterol doesn't do his job. He allows the leadoff single. Christian Pache's at second base. He pinch ran for Travis d'Arnaud. Kenley Jansen comes in to face Rosario. The first pitch that Jansen threw in that game, it's a hot shot up the middle, right off Corey Seager's glove. Braves win. It's a ball that Seager should have had. It's a tough play, but he should have had it. But it results in the Braves winning. Again, they get the big hit when they need it. Game 3, miraculous comeback by the Dodgers. Game 4, the Braves blow out the Dodgers. Game 5, Dodgers blow out the Braves. Game 6, Braves have an early 1-0 lead. The Dodgers tie the game at 1 in the top of the 4th. Eddie Rosario is up with runners on 2nd and 3rd, 2 men out. Walker Buehler threw a solid pitch, but Rosario didn't try to do too much with it. He slapped it down the right field line. It carried. Home run Braves. That won them the pennant. You had to love the emotion from Rosario there. That's okay. I don't mind that. You hit a 3-run home run to give your team the lead with 15 outs to go. And you're trusting your bullpen to protect a 3-run lead. You can celebrate. Go nuts. The Braves were the underdog since the All-Star break. Since the Acuna injury. Since rebuilding the outfield. Since facing the Brewers. Since facing the Dodgers. A team that once they got past the Giants, everyone thought they'd win the pennant. In fact, a lot of people thought they'd win the World Series, and you can include me in that group. But once the Braves went up 2-0, and they won those back-to-back games in Atlanta in walk-off fashion, you knew that the series was over. I said it a week ago yesterday, that every game from here on out would be must-win for the Dodgers. At the end of the day, they couldn't do it. The Braves put them behind the 8 ball early. Give them all the credit in the world. If any Braves team deserves to win their first pennant this century, it's this Braves team. A team that was counted out numerous times. A team that for years, for decades, never seemed like it could get over the hump. But this Braves team feels like it's something different. Give Alex Anthopoulos, Brian Snitker, and the players a ton of credit for everything they've accomplished. As for the Astros, I used to be a big wrestling fan. I mean, I was obsessed with it. had all the action figures, bought all the pay-per-views, had all the shirts. No one loved wrestling more than me, once upon a time. In wrestling, you have good versus bad, or in wrestling parlance, you have the babyface, the good guy, versus the heel, the bad guy. Some wrestlers love being the heel. Some don't. Some can't handle it. Especially if it gets into patriotic territory. But some love it. Some feed off that hate. They feed off the booze. They feed off the anger. I mean, it was honestly a question that I would toy around with in my head a lot. If I ever got into wrestling, would I want to be a babyface or a heel? I feel like I want to start off as a babyface, then turn into a heel, maybe go back to a babyface. But look, if you're getting that reaction from the crowd, you're doing your job. Think about it like this. One of my favorite movies of all time is Psycho. And not the remake, not any of the sequels, the original. With Anthony Perkins, Janet Leigh, John Gavin, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. One of my favorite movies. When you're watching that movie for the first time, and, spoiler alert, you see Norman Bates kill Marion Crane, and then Arbogast. Weren't you rooting for him to be caught? Weren't you rooting for him to face justice? Weren't you rooting against him? I mean, granted, the lines get a little blurred in that movie. Marion steals the money. You realize that Norman Bates is clinically insane. But I'll tell you, the first time I saw Psycho, I was rooting against Norman Bates. A great performance, like the one by Anthony Perkins, or insert great wrestling heel here, can do that. It can provide that emotion that is very hard to explain. It's just something programmed deep inside you that makes you want to root against this guy. And when he wins, or it seems like he's about to win, it gets you really upset. It doesn't affect you directly. I mean, you know it's a movie. You know that wrestling is, to use a Ric Flair line, choreographed. But it still affects you, the consumer, deep down inside you. That's what the Houston Astros are. They're a heel. They're a great villain. Everyone outside the city of Houston was rooting against the Astros. My favorite game of the Yankees season this year was that first game, May 4th, against the Astros. I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. My father and I made a pact after the sign stealing became public. Regardless of what we have previously scheduled, we will make it our business to go to that first Yankees-Astros game in the Bronx. Obviously, we were going to do it in 2020, but COVID happened. We went on May 4th. I have been to Yankee Stadium for playoff games, for World Series games, for Yankees-Red Sox games. I've heard Yankee Stadium rock. That atmosphere in that stadium on May 4th was unlike anything I've ever experienced. There was a kid in my section, a bunch of rows below me, that was in an Astros jersey, and he was with his mother. And he was getting it from the crowd. I turned to my father and I said to him, that's a form of child abuse right there, but not from the fans yelling at him, from the mother. You can't let your kid show up in an Astros jersey in that game. Use your noodle. I mean, if you're older and you can handle it, great, fantastic. No issue with that. But a little kid? No, you don't let him wear that jersey. And if he really wants to wear it, you just don't buy a ticket. I mean, I got into it, and so did my father. As we were going through the metal detectors, the guy going through on the other end had an Astros jersey on, and he was getting it, and my father went over and he said, check him twice, or make sure he doesn't have any trash can lids, or something like that. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was funny. When Rougned Odor collided with Martin Maldonado, I screamed at Maldonado, get the F up, you other word for a cat that reminds me of a very good Tom Jones song. At the time, the New York City restrictions to lessen the impact of the coronavirus made it so only 10,850 fans could be in the stands for that game. Those 10,850 fans sounded like 50,000 fans. It was nothing short of incredible. And look, they got booed wherever they went. They got it from the Dodgers. They got it from the White Sox. They got it from the Red Sox. They got it from everyone. They're going to get it from the Braves. But you know what? The reality is, this Astros team likes being the villain. They feed off it. It makes them play better. What the Houston Astros have managed to do is nothing short of incredible. To rebound from a scandal that very easily could have made it so they'd go on another period of having losing baseball to now winning the American League is just insane. I'm not a big Dusty Baker fan. Nice guy. I know everyone likes him. I've never met him. I just think he's a little overrated as a manager. But to whip this team into shape and get them to the ALCS last year and the World Series this year is nothing short of incredible. To have this offense show up the way that it's shown up is amazing. Think about it. In the ALDS against the White Sox, these were the four final scores. Game 1, the Astros won 6-1. Game 2, the Astros won 9-4. Game 3, the White Sox won 12-6. Game 4, the Astros won 10-1. So there was never a game in the ALDS where the Astros scored less than 6 runs. Now that changed in the ALCS. Game 1, the Astros won 5-4. Game 2, the Red Sox won 9-5. Then Game 3, the Red Sox won 12-3. But then Las Diaz flipped the switch. That missed third strike was the turning point of this series. It shouldn't have been. It should have been something that the Red Sox could get past. Not for nothing, but you're Nathan Eovaldi going up against Jason Castro. You should be able to throw one more strike. You shouldn't have needed to, but you're not the first pitcher to get hosed on a missed third strike. You deal with it, you move past it, that's baseball. Instead, the Red Sox basically fumbled that series away to the Astros. Now, give the Astros credit for taking the ball and running with it, scoring 7 runs in the top of the 9th without recording a single out, winning Game 5 9-1, winning Game 6 5-0. Give the Astros credit. But in a way, I feel like that feeds into the narrative that the Astros are the big bad wolf. They're only here because of a missed third strike call. Come on, they really don't deserve that. They steal strikes, now they have the umpires stealing balls against them. Come on, they don't need that help. This is really good versus evil. The Braves are good. They're a very easy story to get behind. Their best player tears his ACL. They have to rebuild the outfield from scratch. Second half of the season, they run away with the NL East. They upset the Brewers and the Dodgers. It's very easy to get behind them. But when you look at who they're going against, the big bad Astros, this is shaping up to be a great wrestling match. This is shaping up to be a great Hollywood movie. Now in wrestling, at the end of an epic feud between a great babyface and a great heel, usually the babyface wins. Not always, but usually. In Hollywood, the good guy always wins. I'm gonna say that life will imitate art. You take a look at the Astros pitching. I understand that they got great performances from Framber Valdez in Game 5 and Luis Garcia in Game 6. But I don't think that's sustainable. Against this really talented Braves offense, with Rosario, Freeman, Albies, Swanson, Peterson, and Riley, I just can't see the Astros starting pitching holding up. And the Braves pitching will hold up. Okay, Game 3, the Braves had one bad inning. The bottom of the 8th. That was it. And Game 5, you got the sense that the Braves really weren't motivated to win that game. They were aiming for Game 6. They wanted to win in front of their home crowd. They just looked dead to the world all throughout that game. They didn't look that bad in any other game in this postseason. I think the Braves pitching will carry them in this series. I feel like this is a World Series that's easy to get into. Even if you're a casual baseball fan, you're not going to want to see the Astros win again. So you'll root against the Braves, a team with a very easy story to get behind. Braves in 6. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. And I'll start with Saints Seahawks. Holy cannoli. Was that a bad game? What a tough game to get into. Look, I knew going into that game that I'd have a tough time being invested in it. But as it unfolded, my gosh. Make no mistake about it, the Saints are a bad team. I don't care that they're 4-2. Okay, congratulations to them. They're a game up on the Vikings and Falcons for the second wildcard spot. But their offense is atrocious. Their defense is great. Dennis Allen, their defensive coordinator, may get another chance to be a head coach because of how well the Saints defense is playing. If you'll recall, he was Raiders coach in 12, 13, and the first 4 games of the 14 season. He went 8-28. He was dreadful. He could get a second chance. He could get a second chance very easily. I'm not saying that the Saints defense is good based on what they did yesterday. It doesn't take much skill to slow down Geno Smith. But in terms of points against per game, they're the 3rd best defense in the NFL. Yards against per game, 8th best in the NFL. Passing touchdowns against, 2nd best in the NFL. They have 9 interceptions. That's the 3rd best mark in the NFL. Rushing yards per game, they're 3rd in the NFL. Rushing yards per attempt, they're leading the NFL. Their defense is sensational. And you saw it on display yesterday. They only had 1 bad play the whole game. I'm not kidding. It was just the 84-yard DK Metcalf touchdown. That was it. That was the only bad play. And not for nothing, but that came on the 5th play of the game with Geno Smith under center. So after that, you have the Saints defense shutting the door. That's impressive. That's a big shot in the mouth. Terrible job by Marshawn Lattimore and the very overrated Marcus Williams. But not for nothing, that can't be your only big play in the game. Excluding that 84-yard pass, Geno Smith only had 83 passing yards. That one play accounted for more than half of his total passing yards. That is a new level of ineptitude. I don't think Geno ever had that with the Jets, where you could take away just one play and you'd eliminate half his production. You know how many total yards the Seahawks had? 219. Take away that one play, it goes down to just 135. The Seahawks looked dead to the world on offense. On defense, they were good. I liked what I saw from the front seven. Guys like Bobby Wagner, Poona Ford, Benson Mayowa, Jordan Brooks, Carlos Dunlap, Alton Robinson, and Al Woods. But there's only so much that a defense can do. It's great that the Seahawks defense held the Saints to just 13 points. It's great that Jameis Winston only had 222 passing yards from a Seahawks perspective. From a Seahawks perspective, it's really good that you limited Alvin Kamara's production on the ground. 20 carries for only 51 yards. Granted, he had 10 catches for 128 yards and a touchdown, but still, he didn't kill you with his legs. Like I said, good job by the front seven. But if your offense can't score, a great defense means nothing. And not for nothing, the only touchdown that the Saints had in this game was a weird fumble by Jameis Winston that he picked up. He kept his composure and threw a strike to Alvin Kamara. That was a good play by Winston. But overall, he really didn't impress me. It was a lot of quick strikes to Kamara and let him do his thing after the catch. Not for nothing, but if something happens to Kamara, the Saints are dead. Forget about it. An offense can't be that one-dimensional. Football's unpredictable. A season-ending injury can happen very quickly. The Saints need to get more production on offense from their players not named Alvin Kamara. All in all, this was a terrible game. This was probably the worst Monday Night Football game of the year. Very tough to get into. People said to me, hey, Geno will be fine as the backup. He'll hold his own. Don't worry about it. He'll be fine. Yeah, no. No, he won't. The Seahawks have now lost 3 straight. They're 2-5. They're in last place in the NFC West. They don't have their first rounder this year. That belongs to the Jets. I have a sneaking suspicion that Russell Wilson's gonna want out at the end of this year. And if he goes, would it surprise you if Pete Carroll went back to USC? I feel like the Seahawks could be on the precipice of a major rebuild. A new coach, a new quarterback. I'm very pessimistic about the Seahawks' future. Just brought up the Jets, so now it's time to talk about them. They traded a conditional 6th rounder to the Eagles that could become a 5th rounder based on playing time from one Joe Flacco. Yes, that is right. Joe Flacco is back with the New York Jets, proving Joe Douglas's ineptitude. Literally, you could look at this trade as Exhibit A of Douglas's ineptitude. For months, we were screaming for the Jets to add a veteran backup quarterback. Someone to help Zach Wilson through the trials and tribulations. Someone who could come in and hold his own if Wilson gets hurt. Instead, all we heard was the Jets talking up Mike White and James Morgan. The Jets added Josh Johnson only to put him on the practice squad. What on earth is a practice squad quarterback gonna do for Zach Wilson? What, another guy to listen to in the quarterback room? No, he needs to be there on the sidelines with Wilson, talking to him with the offensive coordinator. James Morgan gets cut. He's now a Panther. Mike White looked so bad that Joe Douglas traded for another quarterback. Here's the thing, though. He didn't need to trade for a quarterback. There were two different things he could have done. Number one, just roll with Mike White. There's literally no reason to trot out a veteran at this point. You're 1-5. You're one of the worst teams in the NFL. If you were really high on Mike White, then give him a chance. If you were never high on Mike White, then you lied. And why did you have him as the backup quarterback through the first 7 weeks of this season? You had to know that Wilson getting hurt was a possibility. Football's a violent game. But here's the other thing. All Douglas had to do was sign a freaking backup in the offseason. That's it. That's literally it. Instead of giving up draft capital for Flacco, you could have re-signed him incredibly easily. No one would have had a problem with that. A Super Bowl MVP as the backup quarterback, as the mentor for Wilson? Fine. I understand that Flacco didn't set the world on fire with the Jets. Believe me, I know. But no one would have banged their fist on the table and said that this guy can't be a good backup quarterback. Let's be fair. He wasn't dreadful against the Cardinals. He was dreadful against the Dolphins. He was really good against the Patriots on Monday Night Football. And he was actually pretty decent against the Chargers. The Jets had a chance to win that game. The completion percentage left something to be desired. Last year he had a 55.2 completion percentage. But in 4 games, he threw for 864 yards. He had 6 touchdowns to just 3 interceptions. Not terrible. You're not going to have a great quarterback as your backup. Like, honestly, if you had gone into the season with Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco on the active roster and Mike White on the practice squad, maybe Josh Johnson, no one would have had an issue with that. No one would have had a problem with Joe Flacco starting. But again, all offseason we heard that Mike White is good. We heard that you believed in him. We heard that he had talent. Now you're bringing in outside help. It makes no sense. Now you're giving up draft capital for a quarterback. It makes no sense. You're 1-5. Just roll with the young kid you have in White. And if he struggles, bring in Josh Johnson. If you're not comfortable in the players that you have, why do you not add reinforcements? Why did you not address the backup quarterback position in the offseason? This isn't being a Monday morning quarterback. No pun intended. I was screaming for the Jets to add a backup quarterback in the offseason. Tyrod Taylor, Andy Dalton, CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins. You could have brought back Flacco, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Give me a good veteran backup. Not some schmagegi in Mike White, who no one would know if he came to their house and delivered them a pizza. This was so preventable. Don't tell me that it's just a 5th or 6th rounder. Those can turn into something. I'm not saying that Joe Douglas would have drafted the next Tom Brady, but you can't throw away draft picks, especially if you're a rebuilding team. That's what Douglas just did. Joe Douglas is a buffoon. He is nothing short of a buffoon. I'm getting real tired of him real quick. You know he's going to survive. Even if the Jets go 1-16. You know he's surviving. You know Salah's surviving. Next offseason, he needs to be crazy aggressive. Enough with the kicking the can down the road. Enough with trying to address things mid-season. Enough with waiting until after the fact to try to add talent. Like you did with Ryan Khalil, Demaryius Thomas, and now Joe Flacco. Be a little proactive. Use your noodle. You allegedly have one. Use it. Now, the question on some Jets fans' minds have been, who's going to start? Rich Cimini of ESPN, the best Jets beat writer there is, just tweeted that Flacco's going to be the backup. Mike White will start. That still shows you, though, that the Jets don't have a lot of confidence in White. If they had confidence in White, they wouldn't go out and add a proven backup. They're trading for Flacco because they think they may need a backup. They don't want to roll out Josh Johnson. They have no confidence in Johnson because Flacco's the new third-string quarterback when Wilson comes back. And they have no confidence in White because if they had confidence in him, they wouldn't have gone outside the organization for quarterback help. If you have confidence in White, why would you give up an asset for a backup that, under your theory, isn't going to see the field? That's what the Jets have been doing so far. They have a ton of confidence in Wilson, so they didn't invest heavily in a backup. This shows you that they have no confidence in White, which means he never should have been the backup. You know the Jets are going to get their doors blown off on Sunday. That game's going to be over after 3 quarters, maybe sooner. It was supposed to be different. Joe Douglas came in with a great reputation, bringing in Salah, a guy who just 2 years ago was calling plays in the Super Bowl, bringing in a hotshot, young, offensive mind, and Mike LaFleur. It's the same old thing. You can't tell me that this Jets team is any better than last year's team. Hallelujah. They got their first win before week 14. That means nothing. This Jets team is a joke. I'll close this show out by breaking down the Kenny Young trade. The Rams traded Young to the Broncos, along with a 7th rounder in 2024. In exchange, they're getting a 6th rounder in 2024. It's very interesting that the Broncos are being so aggressive in adding depth to their defense. They traded for Stephen Weatherly over the weekend. Now they're bringing in Young. This is a defense that's been very good. I don't know why they're investing so heavily in defense. Improve the offense. I'm not saying improve any of these skill positions. I'm saying improve the O-line. Outside of left tackle, which is where Garrett Bowles is, one of the better left tackles in the game, the Broncos can improve their O-line very, very easily. They invested heavily in Graham Glasgow. They invested heavily in Dalton Risner. They invested heavily in Lloyd Cushenberry. It's not working. I don't understand this. Our strength is defense. Our weakness is the O-line. So in order to compensate for that, we're gonna make our strength stronger? That doesn't work for me. I mean, Young makes sense for the Broncos. Von Miller got a little banged up against the Browns. Bradley Chubb hasn't played since week 2. Young's a really good backup. He's been starting for the Rams, but he's not a starter in a perfect world. This year, according to Pro Football Focus, he has a 58.3 overall grade. In fact, if that's the grade he finishes with, that would be the highest grade he's ever had at the end of a season. So look, Young's a good backup. This trade makes sense in a bubble. I just don't understand why the Broncos are foregoing improving their offense for their defense. Their hole is on the O-line. They're not addressing it. I don't like that. Do they have time? The answer is yes. The trade deadline is a week from today at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. But it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. It seems like they're content to just upgrade their defense. As for what the Rams are getting out of this, they're moving up around in the 2024 draft. And this opens up a spot for Ernest Jones, their 3rd round pick this year out of South Carolina. A guy who hasn't set the world on fire in his rookie year, but he really hasn't had much of an opportunity to. And when he's played, he's shown some level of talent. He has a 53.2 overall grade, according to Pro Football Focus. On special teams, he has a 61.6 overall grade. He has talent. He has potential. I don't mind the Rams giving him a shot. This trade makes sense for both teams. It really does. The Broncos didn't give up a lot to add some depth to a linebacker core that's pretty shaky right now with their injuries. And the Rams moved up around in a draft and opened up a spot for a rookie who seemingly has talent. And certainly has a ton of potential. Maybe if you put a gun to my head, I'd say that the Rams have a slight edge because this trade makes more sense for them than it does the Broncos in the grand scheme of things. But I know why the Broncos did it. Their logic makes sense. It's just not what I would do if I was George Payton. So again, gun to my head, 51-49 edge to the Rams. But I really don't have a huge problem with this from a Broncos perspective. Until tomorrow, I'm Jacob Valk, and always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.